Welcome to Belief Busters Podcast, where we change the world one belief at a time. True transformation happens when we question if the beliefs we hold are of truth, or simply someone else's belief that we have internalized as our own. I'm your host, Rev. Sheree Taylor-Jones, and I'm glad you could join us on the journey.
But with great joy and honor, it's my privilege to have at MYOB this evening, Reverend Sheree Taylor-Jones. And so we welcome you with all our heart to share with us your heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. When I speak with you, it's always a heart-to-heart connection, and it always moves me. And so I'm very grateful for us communing. I think that's the right word. And I'll be honest that when I found out what the topic was, I was filled with dread. Like, no, not this topic. And it also allowed me to just speak my truth as I see it regarding our founding fathers and where we are today. So we'll begin. Everyone knows this sentence from the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are powerful words. I don't know about you, but I remember hearing them. I think I was around 5th grade, so about 10 years old, 9, 10 years old, somewhere like that. And I'm sure, like me, you probably felt goosebumps and a quickening of the heart. And perhaps, like me, you also felt really proud of our founding fathers, especially Thomas Jefferson, his eloquence, the words that he committed to paper, voicing that they were on the side of right and breaking away from tyranny, creating a new world filled with freedom and happiness. And we learned that the Declaration of Independence was more than likely one of the first dominant narratives that many of us have been exposed to. And what do I mean by the dominant narrative? The dominant narrative is a story or an explanation that supports the ideals and interests of the dominant social group that rules us. Here are a few examples of these types of narratives. We read the history of the love match that is the Pocahontas story. We heard the story of the Southern gentleman who, as a Confederate soldier, was simply preserving his heritage. Or the Black woman who was living her best life as the queen of welfare, wrongly spending your hard-earned tax dollars. Or the needed war on drugs against crime lords who were killing our children. All of these are false narratives given by the dominant social group of our society to promote themselves as honorable leaders who care about others while keeping the status quo of the haves and have-nots intact. And we are at a pivotal point in our society right now because we're witnessing this trend continuing. Right now, what we're seeing is coming into formation a promotion that slavery was so long ago that it has no impact on generational wealth, education, housing, health, and opportunities today. In actuality, Florida is going so far as to rewrite history, saying that the slaves gained needed skills to perpetuate their ideology that slaves benefited from slavery. Our society is doing what it has always done. We're just witnessing it in present moment creation, as opposed to the dominant narratives that were created generations before us and simply passed down. This is both concerning and really amazing for us on this spiritual journey. Concerning because we are seeing how lies can be distorted to become the new history created by those in power. And I know sometimes it feels daunting, but I'm here to tell you that it really is also amazing. And why would I say that? I'm saying that because it's a lifting of the veil. You see, all the things that have been going on for generations have been going on, but now we are realizing what's happening. We didn't realize before because we were so bogged down with trying to achieve the American dream, right? The success, the accumulation of wealth, that we often didn't have the capacity to look beyond. Now that the veil is no longer blocking reality, we can see more clearly. And I love the work that Charles is doing with MYOB, because he's asking us to look at the reality, to challenge the accepted norms. And I think this series has been really interesting because I got the opportunity to listen to both Edward and Lem discuss this topic as well. And I like that Edward spoke about the culture of the late 1800s, and that the definition of happiness at that time meant contributing to society. And I think it's really important to understand what the intention of the writer was at the time of writing. And I mean, as a minister, we do that quite regularly, right? When we perform exegesis on a sacred text, we're trying to convey what the writers were writing and hoping to get across to the people they were writing to and why they were writing to those people. And I also thought Lem was on point when he shared how beautiful the words of the Declaration of Independence were, because they really are quite beautiful words, and that it held lofty dreams that weren't able to be met by the founding fathers, who wanted freedom from British tyranny while they doled out tyranny to the slaves they owned, and upheld the system of wealth throughout the ownership of Black people as a good business model. Our founding fathers, for all their desire for freedom, were flawed. They were living in cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological term that is defined as the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change. These men believed they deserved freedom. Here's the next sentence of the Declaration of Independence. After the claim of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it says, I quote, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizations, its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness, end quote. Can you see the cognitive dissonance here? How are these beautiful words penned by a man who owned 600 slaves, who kept the children that he bred with a slave woman as slaves? And even after his death, he didn't free her. His daughter had to be the one that freed this woman. In the Declaration, the founding fathers are saying it's acceptable to abolish any government that doesn't get its consent from the people, and to create a new government that listens to the will of the people. That seems like a fair request. So what does that mean for us today? Currently, we are ruled by government that is not concerned with the will of the people. So are we required to do anything? First, it's important that we look at the beliefs that we hold about our founding fathers. They have become these mythic legends, right? Like, I cannot tell a lie, I cut down the cherry tree, right? I mean, we've all heard that story. They've become these mythic legends of honesty, freedom fighters for all, and the holders of the ark of justice. And when we look behind the veil, we see rich white men who were slave owners and colonizers, who justified the brutal killing of the native people, treated Black people as animals, destroyed Black families, and were the new oligarchy rulers of America. Then we have to ask ourselves the questions: how did we come to believe the mythic legends were true of our founding fathers? Well, most of us were taught this in school. Then later it was upheld by others in our society. We heard the stories of their honorable deeds over and over. And guess what? Then we started telling these same stories. It's called indoctrination. And every nation in the world does this. So the next step in questioning our beliefs is to not shame or blame ourselves or others for believing these stories. We cannot know what we don't know. You are not at fault for having been born into our society and been programmed. None of us are. And here's the thing: once the rose-tinted glasses come off, we can't put them on again. We may try, I can tell you from personal experience, they don't work the same anymore. So now comes the time to deal with the emotions that come up from understanding what you thought you knew as truth isn't true. See, we're not responsible for what was done to us, but we are responsible for our own awakening, our own growth, and our own transformation. And so in this process, when we challenge our beliefs, I want to really stress that being kind, loving, and compassionate to yourself and others is so important during this time of questioning. Because during this time, it's normal to feel vulnerable and unsure of the world around us, values, and even our identity sometimes, depending on how deep that belief runs. And then once you find out what is true, you then have decisions to make. Isn't that the spiritual journey? Our awakening requires us to poke our heads above the parapet. And sometimes that can be really scary. But when you know your life's purpose, and if that is something that we are here to do, we do it anyway. So I'm going to end this discussion with these questions. Once you come to a place of realizing that the belief that you held for 10, 20, 50, 60, 80 years is no longer true, you have a choice. Do you hold on to that belief, even though it's erroneous, or do you choose to change it? Do you continue to perpetrate the lies to fit in and be comfortable, go with the status quo, or do you start changing how you share the truth? Do you consider that you may have to be more involved in governance Or do you go the other side of saying, I'm separating from politics and a broken two-party system? You see, finding out the truth, whatever it is, whatever that belief is, requires us to take action. And so, what is yours to do? That's the spiritual journey of always discerning what is ours to do on every level of awakening. It's just not a theoretical practice. It's about how do we be the change that we want to see in the world. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Reverend Sheree, you did a potent job here of actually summarizing the whole month and bringing in, because I did send her the recordings of our first 2 weeks and Dr. Lim, and the core and the heart of it all is that when we know what we have not understood or known, it is about a transformation or not. And
Yes.
that transformation, and for me, and I want everyone, please give input on this, because this is more a sharing of a heartfelt reality of purposefulness to the future, and that future generations can be taught what we were not. And that's the scary part right now that's going on, is that there's the reversal of that, to go backwards or to gloss over, and that is scary. And the banning of books and the types of things that are happening. But I think the key is how we appear in the world ourselves, and that we seek to be as true and authentic in the world when we're out there and when we're observing what we do, and we have the courage and vulnerabilities to speak up when we see something that, hey, you might think about this, you might look at this in a new way. And it's not about creating warring and fighting and what we have in this broken political system, because it is broken.
Yeah.
But it is about building the bridges that we can listen and have opposing views, but be able to begin the way and means to unfold how we can come together for the greater will and good of the people. I mean, without exception, everyone without exception. And so, gosh, please, others, contribute your thoughts here, because Reverend Sheree, you gave us some, it's like Dr. Lim really gave us a class that was, I felt like I was in a college class, and it was wonderful. And you've done the same thing. You've enriched us with very pertinent insight. And yet, one key thing before, and I'll stop, but that it's not about looking back with shame and guilt and remorse. It's looking forward with awareness, opportunity, and the potency that we can see things in a more caring and loving way for everyone. And that we take accountability for that in our lives.
If you are enjoying these conversations about assessing your belief systems and how to transform outdated beliefs, then please subscribe and give us a positive review. To support this podcast and its transformative work, you can also become a sponsor for as little as $5 a month. You can reach Rev Sheree at info@beliefbusterspodcast.org. To continue on this journey of evolution, You can also get my book, Turning Your Why into Why Not, at Amazon or any other bookstores, which gives you practical tools to do this work. See you next time on the flip side.